Good morning, explorers, and welcome back to another episode of More to Explore, where Mike and I get to share some of the best clips from the past couple of weeks. In this episode, we're looking at wintertime adaptations. So thank you everyone for joining us this morning. Donna says good morning. Portia, Ahmet, and Stephanie H. An Explore show is always wonderful beginning to my week. Thank you. No, we want to say thank you for joining us, and it's definitely the best way to start my week. And I'm joined, of course, by my co-host and Explore.org's resident naturalist, Mike Fitz. Mike, good afternoon.
Hey, hello everyone, no matter where you happen to be around the world, and thanks to this gray seal for joining us right now. That is one tubby pup. So thanks to our cam ops who are looking at those cameras right now and giving us these great views. I'm happy to be here. It's a good way to start the week. And for those of you new to Explore.org, welcome to the community. And welcome back to all of our longtime viewers. We're the world's largest live nature cam network with about 190 live cameras all over the world. Right now, we're looking at gray seals on Seal Island National Wildlife Refuge off the coast of Maine. If you have comments, questions for us, drop those in the chats. We'll be looking for them during the broadcast today. Want to let us know what cams you're going to be watching this week too. You can let us know. We'll be reading those or looking for those. But yeah, Brian, you said we're going to focus on wintertime adaptations, and I'm wondering if the weather's cold in your neighborhood.
I mean, I'm going to say it's cold for me.
Okay.
I'm in the Los Angeles area, and it just creeped up to 50 degrees. So yeah, that's pretty chilly for us. But it started to
Well,
rain, which we're, of course, we're fortunate with all the fires. But I'm sure it's much warmer than it is in your neck of the woods.
well, when the temperatures are like in the 40s or 50s and it's raining, that is cold. Like it's hard to stay warm under those conditions. Sometimes I'd rather have it snow, and be cold enough to snow than have like 40 degrees and rain. So yeah, I know what you mean. In my area of North America, we're entering what is usually the coldest time of the year. Last week, the temperatures were well below 0 degrees Fahrenheit. And I'm always amazed by the ability of wildlife to endure such extreme temperatures. Winter challenges the ability of many animals to survive, and there is no one size fits all strategy that works for everyone. But let's think about just like the basic ways that animals can respond to winter. So one way you can do that is just to avoid it. Yeah, you can go underground if you have that ability. Let's say you're a mouse, you can live under the snow, like they do. You can migrate away from it like a bird. You can hibernate like a bear. You can go into dormancy like a tree happens to do. So avoidance is a big thing. Dying is another way. We don't tend to think about this too much, but a lot of creatures just die, and they're like, "Hey, the heck with this. I've laid my eggs, or whatever. My seeds are produced. I'm done with this crap." So we see that in plants and animals that complete their entire life cycle in a year. And then the third general option is just to tolerate it. This is an adaptive strategy that we'll focus on during the program today. We'll start with gray seals, we'll move to other animals. So let's look at how a few animals tolerate cold using adaptations of blubber, blood, and body size to survive winter. So yeah, with the gray seals, in December on More to Explore, we encouraged everyone to start watching the seal cam. It's now peak seal pup time on Seal Island, Maine. They're not going to get any fatter than they are on the island right now. Female seals, they come to the island to give birth and nurse their pups, and we've been treated to some remarkable footage of seals giving birth and lots of fat seal pups. This species of seal is a seal that's found across the North Atlantic. So you'll find it in parts of Europe. You'll find it, of course, in parts of North America as well. But they live really between in this happy medium, in between icebound Arctic waters to the north and the warm conditions of the subtropical tropical seas to farther south. So water temperature is one of those things that influences their lives, of course, but it isn't likely the only factor that influences where they can live. They're facing pressures from food availability, disease, predation, competition. Those things constantly challenge their survival. Yet gray seals thrive at water temperatures that a person cannot survive within for very long. And the Gulf of Maine, where these seals are, is cold all year. So really, even in the summertime, it usually doesn't get much above 50 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's usually pretty cold. And consider the difficulties of staying warm for marine mammals. You're in the water all the time. Unless you come to land to give birth or something like that, liquid water conducts heat roughly 25 times faster than air. Humans take advantage of that physics to cool our bodies through sweating. Gray seals, though, again, they don't escape water except for those brief periods of time where they come to rest on land. So, how have they adapted to survive the difficulties of the cold? Body shape is really important. The bigger you are, the longer it takes you to cool down. And we'll talk more about that later in the program, but you also need to be well insulated too. Fat has great insulating properties, which gray seals use to their advantage in their blubber. We tend to think simply of fat as a nutrient like protein or sugar, but we mammals utilize body fat as a specialized organ in a lot of ways. The adaptive function of body fat can vary a lot from species to species, of course, although its purpose serves for much more than energy storage in gray seals. Marine mammals with lots of blubber, like seals, can fine tune the blood flow through through superficial blood vessels near the surface of the skin. So this allows fine scale adjustment of the blubber's insulative properties, but either by constricting or dilating blood vessels to regulate blood flow in blubber. In essence, gray seals can modify the heat conductance of blubber, which allows them to maintain high core body temperatures while immersed in water. Humans have the same types of blood vessels as seals, like near the surface of our skin, just not at the same densities, and it's not coupled with blubber either. So our fat doesn't function in the same way. It's not arranged in the same way. And consequently, our ability to regulate our body temperature in the same way is much more limited. So when you're watching a gray seal, even those pups on the island that are only a few weeks old, you're watching a creature with a thermoregulatory ability that far exceeds our own. So enjoy these mermaid potatoes to steal an apt description of the seals from our social media manager, Courtney. There will be lots of pups on Seal Island into February, and thanks to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and our webcam partner, the National Audubon Society Seabird Institute, for working with us once again to bring these scenes to you. Brian, let's move on because we're going to move back to some mainland animals in just a minute. And I also understand that there's been some more people in the chats.
Yeah, I just want to say, give another couple shout outs to everybody saying good morning. MW says good morning, all. Rolling Trouble, good to see you. And Stephanie H says great timing for the show. Yesterday I was wondering how the birds and animals stay warm in freezing temps. Well, here you go. Thank you all for joining. And of course, if you have any questions about any of the animals that we're seeing today, go ahead and ask them in the chat, and our helpful moderators will bring them over to us. But Mike, like you were mentioning, let's head over to Alaska, and Fairbanks, Alaska, to take a look at the muskox, which this is one of my favorite clips that we've had recently. It just seems like a total zoomy session. It was great to watch.
Yeah, not a behavior you would expect to see in a muskox. So great to see this individual having a bit of fun out there in the snow. And these animals, I think, are like the ice age or the Arctic mammal, at least in my mind. If you want to quibble with me, you could do that in the comments. But yeah, I think muskox are like, one of the animals that are best adapted for winter in so many different ways. They're big bodied. They're good at saving energy by hunkering down to wait out the worst winter storms, and not the least of which they grow an insulating undercoat of fur, which is known as kiviute. This is a different type of fur than their long, shaggy overcoat. So we really can't see that under fur through their long overcoat. But the kiviute is super warm, super soft. Each follicle, I read, averages about 17 to 18 microns in diameter, and it holds remarkable insulating properties. Wow. So it's like finer than the finest sheep's wool. Let's consider that this fur can only go so far in helping a mammal survive. I'm really not going to be talking about the fur of these muskox, but really it's their blood in one way that helps them to survive winter. Each warm-blooded animal species, including muskox, survive winter by utilizing a suite of adaptations. So let's look past the fur and consider how their blood functions in the cold. And this is something that I only started reading about last week. And there's lots about animal physiology that I don't pretend to know much about. So I'll try to summarize as best I can. But the ability of human blood to transfer oxygen is temperature sensitive. If blood gets too cold, then it has a harder time unloading oxygen where it is needed. Muscles and other body tissues need oxygen to function properly. I've experienced this when my hands have been very cold. My muscle quickness, my grip strength just seems to disappear. And it's very uncomfortable and it can be very dangerous, especially if I need that dexterity to help, help myself survive in an emergency situation. Muskox blood doesn't seem to have the same issue. It can offload oxygen much more efficiently at lower temperatures. Even when their blood temperature drops to something like 20 degrees Celsius or 70 degrees Fahrenheit, one laboratory study found that it can release 1.4 times more oxygen than human blood at the same temperature. Muskox blood also uses far less energy to release oxygen at lower temperatures compared to human blood. So it's just more efficient overall in cold temperatures. Muskox, they keep their core body temperatures about the same as their own. So again, roughly 98 to 99 degrees Fahrenheit, and it remains high all year. So the cold adaptive or the cold adapted advantages of their blood is really useful in their legs, which are exposed to a lot of cold air. So even when their limbs are hypothermic, muskox can move them with an efficiency that's probably greater than our own, especially if our body tissues were at those low temperatures. So they thrive in the cold in part because their blood is adapted to the conditions. And views of muskox and caribou are provided through our partnership with the Large Animal Research Station at the University of Alaska, Fairbanks. So yeah, special animals, really neat animals to look at in a lot of ways, Brian. And next, I think we're sticking to another of North America's large mammals who, like muskox, seem to endure brutal winter weather.
Definitely. Let's head over to Grasslands National Park in Val Marie, Saskatchewan, Canada, where we have our bison watering hole cam.
If you can't hide from the weather, then you got to endure it. And out on the prairie, there's few places to hide. To be Brian, like when you're out in like cold, windy weather, that's some of the worst.
Oh yeah.
The bison just deal with it, like the muskox, like the gray seals. They just sort of shrug their shoulders because they're so well adapted to it. And like many mammals, they're going to try to utilize microhabitats where they can find them to seek out places where they can find slightly milder conditions in winter. But they can't burrow underground like a prairie dog. They can't really migrate to a tropical climate like a bird can. So a muskox, uh, so like a muskox, I should say, excuse me. The bison have a lot of their ability to cope with winter weather. It hinges on their ability to endure it. Let's focus specifically on their body size and how that helps them endure cold. The plains bison, so the subspecies of bison that we're looking at in Grasslands National Park, are some of the largest land mammals in North America. Males weigh up to 2,000 pounds and females weigh up to 1,000 pounds. Another subspecies of bison, the wood bison, that live farther north in Canada, and a few are living in Alaska too. They're even larger. This comes with advantage in winter because big, bulky animals have a greater capacity to stay warm than a small animal. And a big reason for this is just the geometry of the animals themselves. The ratio of surface area to volume on an object is important for heat retention. The bigger you are, the slower you cool down. And if you bear with me for just a moment, we'll do a little bit of math to think about this. Consider a cube that's only 1 centimeter on all sides. So it has 6 sides and 6 square centimeters of surface area. Its volume, though, is only 1 cubic centimeter. So length times width times height gives you volume. So 1 cubic centimeter. So its surface area to volume ratio is is 6 to 1. Now
Mm.
imagine a cube that is 2 centimeters on each side. Each side has a surface area of 4 square centimeters times 6 sides. So it has a surface area of 24 centimeters and a volume of 8 cubic centimeters. So its surface area to volume ratio is 24 to 8, or we can reduce that down to 3 to 1. So the bigger block has much more volume to produce heat, while the small block has twice the surface area for dissipating heat. So the small block would have to work a lot harder to stay warm.
Hmm.
But what if instead of thinking of imaginary blocks, we took a look at mammals? A big animal like a bison has a lot of volume, but not as much proportional surface area compared to a small mammal. Bison therefore have less proportional surface area to lose heat to the environment than a mouse or a prairie dog or a person. So staying warm, it always requires energy But bison try to forage, where they can during the winter to keep their bellies full, and they can lose weight at this time of the year through their efforts to stay warm when they don't have a lot to eat. But their big bodies, that really provides them with big advantages during the winter. So if you are an animal that lives in an environment where there's going to be a lot of cold winter weather, if you have a larger body size, it can give you some pretty great advantages. And Brian, so yeah, the bison, sometimes we'll see them just hunkered down in the cold, snow accumulating on their backs. We can see that too with the next animal that we are going to focus on. Because wolves are large animals too. They have a lot of really great insulation in their fur, but their body geometry isn't really the same as bison. Yet they're doing just fine in the cold.
Yeah. Next up, yeah, we're gonna head over to the International Wolf Center. It's definitely one of my favorite cams to watch this time of year. And you see the three right here. One of my favorite clips from the most recent couple of weeks is this one, just laying on their back, much like you might see a dog do.
Yep, and our dogs are what pretty much like 99% wolves. We've just selected for those that 1% that makes them dogs. And this is a great clip too because it shows up that it shows us that wolves have big lanky feet, long legs. Uh, they are great for running over snow, but this also exposes a lot of the body to the cold. A wolf in winter almost always has cold feet, but it probably never has frostbite in the way because of the way that their legs circulate heat and prevent cold injury. Countercurrent exchange is a mechanism that many animals use to retain heat moving into their limbs. So in the way that works is that outflowing warm blood exchanges some of its heat with inflowing colder blood coming back into the body. And this is part of the way that they retain energy while preventing cold injury. One reference source I read recently stated that wolf pups and yearling Arctic wolves are more likely to die of hypothermia than to suffer frostbite. And this is maybe because their body's physiology is so primed to protect their mobility that they do not shut down blood flow to their feet when they're cold. Other adaptations, besides that countercurrent exchange that help them prevent frostbite in their feet and in their legs, are things like that they can have like a higher percentage of unsaturated fat in parts of their feet, so their feet don't become hard at cold temperatures. Unsaturated fat is the fat that remains liquid at room temperature. So don't think butter, think olive oil, think fish oil, things like that. It's not like they have a pool of olive oil in their feet, but they can have like a higher amount of unsaturated fat in those tissues to help keep them supple. They also keep their feet very cold overall. So it's not like they have hot feet. If you were to touch a wolf's paw after it's been running around in the snow, it would feel very cold. One study I saw found that wolves in very cold snow keep the bottom of their feet just a degree or so above the freezing point of water. Compare that to a human body's response to cold. We have countercurrent exchange in our arms and legs too, but our bodies shut down blood flow to our extremes if too much heat loss is occurring. Our bodies prioritize vital organs over our hands and feet, and it's different in wolves. Wolves in winter, they almost always have cold feet, but coupled with countercurrent exchange and other adaptations, wolves can keep their legs and feet functional under conditions that a human could not at least not without specialized clothing. So thanks to the International Wolf Center for partnering with us to bring footage of wolves to the world. And as a warm-blooded animal, you can fight the cold in many ways. Blood, blubber, body size, other adaptations, can be used to counter the energy and life-sucking forces of winter weather. I can't count the number of times, Brian, when my fingers have been cold or my toes have been cold, and I've wished for the ability to cope with cold as well as some of the animals that we've talked about. Winter is a time to consider the importance of the sun too. Cold weather always helps me appreciate the sun's role in keeping our planet warm and habitable. I think I appreciate summer more because of winter. Plus, sometimes the sun and cold often combine to bring some beauty into the world.
Yeah, definitely. And maybe you can shed some light on the phenomenon of the sundog.
Yeah, this comes to us from Grasslands National Park as well. Sundogs are these interesting phenomenon that they're well, bright spots of light in the sky that appear on either side of the sun. So we're not talking about the sun in the center of the image here, but the arcs of light on the left and the right. And they form because of the refraction of light through ice crystals in the atmosphere. You'll
Hmm.
find them approximately 22 degrees, either left, right, or both from the sun. They don't always appear in pairs because that can depend on where the ice crystals are in the atmosphere. And the footage here doesn't show the light being refracted by the atmospheric ice into its component parts like you see with a prism, but it's kind of happening in the same way. Uh, this could be because these sundogs are particularly bright, or it could be just an effect of the camera. But there's maybe a little bit of prism effect going on with the sundogs. Since sundogs appear through the refraction of light, we can sometimes see visible colors in the light spectrum. Like it'll be like a little redder closer to the sun and blue on the outside of the sundog. The colder the atmosphere, the closer to the ground the sundog can appear too, since atmospheric ice is necessary for their formation. They also form more often when the sun is low on the horizon. So wintertime, therefore, is an ideal time to look for them. And again, thanks to Parks Canada and Grasslands National Park for partnering with us for this footage and that of the bison that we saw earlier. And this is Brian, and just looking at this again, this is a cold scene. You can see you can
Yeah.
see the snow just blowing over that. Prairie dogs, they're hunkered down underneath the snow, just resting, doing just fine. But a lot of those other animals, they're out there just putting up with it, and it always amazes me how well they can do that.
Definitely. And it's very cool that we get to capture it on camera. Like, of course, it would be amazing to see it in person, but this is definitely the next best thing. We'd be warm and inside. um, and that is what we have, all the clips for we have for this week. But we do have some other live events coming up. We do have tomorrow, we do have our Africam show coming up, which is our regular time on Tuesday at 6 a.m. Pacific and 4 p.m. South Africa time. And then, of course, on Thursday, the Wild Moment show, same time, 6 a.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. South Africa time. And we also have another thing that we would like your participation with. We actually started a new form. It's a Google form. One of our moderators will share it in the chat for you. We want to hear more from you and any feedback you have specifically of this show. Before we've asked for, you can always send any feedback to feedback@explore.org. But if you have any ideas for a new segment or anything that you want to see on the show, or even just share a cool moment that you saw that maybe we could feature, we want to hear from you. So definitely check out this form to do so. And Mike, on our last show, you spoke with Charlie about the fundraisers for the LA fires. Do we have any updates on that?
We do actually, and good news in a time of a lot of bad news, in a sense, because our Exploded.org community, came through once again. Uh, so yeah, we're going to conclude the program here in just a moment, but we want to thank everybody who donated to Exploded.org's impromptu yet highly successful fundraiser for the Los Angeles Fire Department Foundation and the Pasadena Humane Society. The fires in the Los Angeles area are devastating. Tens of thousands of people lost their homes. The fires are likely to become the most destructive and costly in modern California history. But in total, our community donated more than $100,000 in less than 5 days. And Charlie Annenberg has pledged to match those donations at a 5-to-1 ratio. So that's going to equal an extra $500,000 in donations for these organizations. So thanks again to the Explore.org community for your generosity. You never seem to fail us when we ask in that way. And yeah, I mean, it's rough going for a lot of people. So please try to check in on your neighbors, no matter where you happen to live, um, uh, either whether that's online or in person. And thanks again to everybody who had at least a few dollars to donate to our fundraiser.
Definitely. And that concludes our show for today. Thank you again for being a part of the Explore family. And I want to give a special thank you, of course, to our moderators and our camera operators and my co-host, Mike Fitz. And join us again. We'll be back on February 10th for another episode of More to Explore. We'll leave you with this amazing seal pup for now. And until then, happy exploring.